They want me to talk about it, about Iwo. I've been back stateside for 3 weeks, and they already want me to talk. The war's not even over yet. Boys are still dying out there in the Pacific, and they want me to sit here and... What? Make it sound noble? Make it sound like it mattered? I'm 22 years old. I feel about 100. My name is Corporal Jack Morrison. I was with the 5th Marine Division, 28th Regiment. We hit the beach at Iwo Jima on February 19th, 1945. That was only 3 months ago. Feels like a lifetime. I enlisted in 42, right after Pearl Harbor. I was 18, angry, ready to kill some Japs. That's what we called them then. Still do, I guess. The enemy. The ones who attacked us. We were going to make them pay. Boot camp at Paris Island was hell. They broke us down, built us back up, turned us into Marines, taught us to shoot, to fight, to follow orders without thinking. Taught us we were part of something bigger than ourselves. Made us believe we were invincible. We shipped out to the Pacific in 43. Saw action at Saipan in 44. That's where I learned what this war really was. Not the movies, not the propaganda posters. Just heat and jungle and men dying in ways that don't make the newspapers. But Saipan was just practice. We didn't know it then, but we were being prepared for something worse. After Saipan, we regrouped in Hawaii, trained for amphibious assaults. They showed us maps of a little volcanic island called Iwo Jima. 8 square miles of black sand and sulfur. Strategic, they said. Needed for the bombing campaign against Japan. Take Iwo. Get airfields for our B-29s. Save American pilots. Made sense on paper. They told us the Navy had been pounding Iwo for months. 74 days of bombardment before we even landed. Destroyers, battleships, carrier planes. They said the island would be softened up. They said Japanese defenses would be crippled. They said it would take a week, maybe 2, to secure the island. More lies. The military's good at those. I remember the night before we shipped out, sitting on deck with the guys from my squad. There was Corporal Danny Rizzo from Brooklyn. Always had a joke, always trying to keep spirits up. Private Mike Chen, a Japanese-American kid from California who'd volunteered to prove his loyalty. Sergeant Bill Hayes, career Marine, old enough to be our father. Private Tommy Sullivan, just turned 19, kid from Iowa who wrote to his girl back home every day. We played cards, smoked cigarettes, tried not to think too hard about what was coming. Think the Japs will even still be there after all that shelling? Tommy asked. If they are, they'll be too shell-shocked to shoot straight, Danny said, grinning. We wanted to believe him. Bill Hayes, Sarge, he just looked at us. He'd been at Guadalcanal, seen the Japanese fight. Don't underestimate them, he said quietly. They don't surrender. They don't run. They die where they stand. We thought he was being dramatic. He wasn't. The night before D-Day, I wrote a letter to my mom, told her I was fine, told her not to worry, told her I'd be home soon, sealed it up and gave it to the chaplain just in case. I still don't know if she ever got it. February 19th, 1945, H-hour 0900. I was in the 5th wave. That meant we got to watch the first 4 waves go in before our turn. Lucky us. The naval bombardment started at dawn. The noise was God. It was like the world ending. Battleship guns, destroyers, rockets. The whole island was hidden behind smoke and fire. They hid it for hours. Nothing could survive that, someone said. We wanted to believe it. At 900, the first wave hit the beach. We watched through binoculars from the transport ship, saw the Higgins boats go in, saw the Marines pile out onto the black sand. For the first few minutes, there was no return fire. Nothing. Just Marines running up the beach, exactly like training. See? Told you they were all dead, Danny said. Then the island woke up. The Japanese had waited, let the first waves land. let them get comfortable, let them bunch up on the beach. Then they opened fire from positions we didn't even know existed. Artillery, mortars, machine guns. The whole volcanic island was fortified. Caves, tunnels, bunkers. All of it invisible from the air, all of it untouched by the bombardment. From the ship, we could see Marines dropping, saw the beach turn into chaos, saw men trying to dig into volcanic sand that wouldn't hold, saw vehicles stuck, unable to move inland, saw the ocean turn red. Jesus Christ, Mike Chen whispered. Our turn came at 10:30. The ride in was the longest 15 minutes of my life. Higgins' boat slamming through the waves. 36 of us packed in like sardines. The smell of diesel fuel and vomit and fear. You could hear the shells hitting the water around us. Could hear the machine gun fire getting louder. The ramp dropped. "Get off the goddamn boat," someone screamed. I jumped into waist-deep water. Cold, shocking. Bullets hitting the water around me, making these sharp cracking sounds. I waded toward the beach as fast as I could, which wasn't fast at all. The gear weighed me down. The water fought me. Each step felt like miles. Martinez, a kid from Texas, took a round to the head before he made it out of the water. Just dropped. Face first, didn't make a sound. I kept moving. What else could I do? Hit the beach and immediately understood why the first waves were stuck. The sand, it wasn't normal sand. It was volcanic ash, loose and deep. You'd take a step and sink 6 inches. Try to run and you'd barely move. Try to dig in and it would collapse on you. And we were completely exposed. No cover, no concealment. Just a long, sloping beach with a 15-foot terrace at the top, and the Japanese owned the high ground. Mortars started falling. That's a sound you don't forget, that whistle. That moment of knowing it's coming and not knowing where. The explosions would throw up huge plumes of black sand, shrapnel flying everywhere. I dove behind a knocked-out Amtrak, one of our amphibious tractors that had made it maybe 50 yards before getting hit. 4 other Marines were already there. I didn't know any of them. Didn't matter. A shell landed close. The concussion felt like getting punched by a giant. Sand rained down. My ears were ringing. Couldn't hear anything but this high-pitched whine. "We gotta move," someone was yelling. I could see his mouth moving, but barely heard the words. "Where?" I shouted back. He pointed inland, toward the terraces, toward the Japanese positions that were tearing us apart. That was the objective. That's what we had to do. Cross 200 yards of killing ground and somehow climb that terrace while they shot at us from fortified positions. It was suicide, but staying put was suicide too. "On 3, the corporal, I think he was a corporal, shouted. 1, 2. He didn't make it to 3. Sniper round, right through the chest. He slumped against the Amtrak, dead before he hit the ground. The rest of us just ran. Sprinted through that terrible sand toward the terrace. I don't remember deciding to move. Don't remember thinking. Just animal instinct taking over. I made it maybe 30 yards before I had to hit the dirt again. Found a small depression, couldn't even call it a crater, and pressed myself flat. Machine gun fire raking over me. So close I could feel the bullets displacing air above my head. Looked to my left. One of the Marines from the Amtrak was there, but he wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. Eyes open, staring at nothing. Looked to my right. Saw Tommy Sullivan, kid from Iowa. He'd made it off the boat. He was crying and firing his M1 at the same time, just shooting at anything, everything, nothing. "Tommy," I yelled, and he looked at me, terrified, lost, just a kid. Then his head snapped back and he fell, gone just like that. I'd known him for 8 months, played cards with him last night. He was dead before noon on his first day of combat. That's when I realized, really understood what we'd landed in. This wasn't going to take a week. This was going to be hell. The first day was the worst. That's what everyone says now. D-Day on Iwo Jima. The bloodiest day in Marine Corps history. We just didn't know it yet. By mid-afternoon, we'd barely moved inland, maybe 70, 80 yards from the beach. Every foot was paid for in blood. The Japanese were dug in deep, pillboxes made of reinforced concrete, machine gun nests in caves, artillery positions you couldn't see until they fired. And they didn't miss. They'd had months to range in every inch of that beach. They knew exactly where we'd land, where we'd take cover, where we'd advance. They'd turned that island into a killing field, and we'd walked right into it. The casualties were staggering. Men were going down faster than the corpsmen could reach them. Bodies everywhere, some still moving, some not. The black sand was soaked red in places. The smell of blood mixed with sulfur from the volcanic rock, like some kind of actual hell. I found my squad, what was left of it, near the first terrace. Sarge Hayes was there directing fire. Danny Rizzo had made it, somehow still cracking jokes even though his hands were shaking. Mike Chen was there too, his rifle barrel smoking from constant firing. But we'd lost 6 men just getting off the beach. 6 men gone in less than 3 hours. "We got to take out that pillbox," Sarge was yelling, pointing to a concrete structure maybe 50 yards ahead. Machine gun fire was coming from it in steady bursts, raking our position, keeping us pinned. "How?" Danny shouted back. "We can't even get close." "Flamethrower." "Where's the flamethrower?" The flamethrower team had been hit coming off the beach. Both men dead, the weapon at the bottom of the ocean. "Grenades, then," and covering fire. We tried. God, we tried. But every time someone would pop up to throw, the Japanese gunners would cut them down. They were too well protected, too well positioned. Shooting at them was like throwing rocks at a tank. A mortar round landed 10 feet from our position. The explosion was deafening. When the smoke cleared, 2 Marines were down. One was screaming, clutching what was left of his leg. The other wasn't making any sound at all. "Corpsman! Corpsman!" someone was yelling. A Navy corpsman, couldn't have been older than 20, came running low across the sand. Brave bastard, they all were. Running toward danger while everyone else was running away from it. He didn't make it. Sniper got him halfway there. He went down hard, medical bag spilling out across the sand. The Marine with the leg wound bled out before anyone else could reach him. That's what the day was like. Moment after moment of men dying. Not heroically, not in some glorious charge. Just dying. Bleeding out in volcanic sand. Drowning in the surf. Cut down by machine gun fire. Blown apart by mortars. We'd been told 22,000 Japanese defenders were on the island. All of them hidden. All of them waiting. All of them willing to die. And they made us pay for every single yard. By nightfall of D-Day, we'd advanced maybe 300 yards inland. The entire 4th and 5th Marine Divisions, 30,000 men, had landed on a beach barely 2 miles long. We were packed in. Nowhere to dig proper foxholes in that sand. Nowhere to hide. The Japanese didn't counterattack that night. They didn't need to. They just kept shelling us. Mortars falling randomly through the darkness. You couldn't see them coming. Couldn't predict where they'd land. Just had to listen for that whistle and pray. I spent the night in a shallow depression with Mike Chen and a private I didn't know named Rodriguez. We took turns on watch. 2 hours on, 1 hour off. Though I don't think any of us actually slept. You could hear the wounded. All across the beach, all through the night. Men crying for corpsmen. Men calling for their mothers. Men screaming. And there was nothing. Nothing you could do for most of them. The corpsmen were overwhelmed. The aid stations were swamped. Some of the screaming would just stop, and you'd know. Mike Chen was quiet most of the night. Finally, around 0300, he spoke. "They're not going to surrender, are they?" "No," I said. "We're going to have to kill every single one of them." "Yeah," And they're going to kill a lot of us doing it. Yeah. That was the reality of Iwo Jima. Not some strategic objective on a map. Not some necessary step toward victory. Just two groups of men trying to kill each other on a worthless piece of volcanic rock, because that's what we'd been ordered to do. Dawn came on the second day. February 20th. I'd been on Iwo Jima for 24 hours and already seen more death than I'd seen in all of Saipan. And we had 35 more days to go. The objective for the day was Mount Suribachi, the big volcanic mountain at the southern tip of the island. The Japanese had artillery positions up there, observers calling in fire on the beach. We had to take it. 550 feet of fortified mountain, honeycombed with tunnels and caves, defended by 1,500 Japanese soldiers who'd sworn to die before surrendering. We started the assault mid-morning. It was brutal, slow. Every cave had to be cleared. Every bunker had to be destroyed. The Japanese would pop out, fire, disappear back into the tunnels. We'd throw in grenades, use flamethrowers, pour fire into every opening. And they kept fighting. Even when we thought a position was cleared, they'd come back, pop out from a different tunnel, attack from behind. They used the whole mountain against us. I saw a flamethrower operator, a Marine named Jackson, torch a cave entrance, stood there and poured fire into it for 30 seconds. The screaming from inside was, God. But it was them or us. That's what we told ourselves. When he ran out of fuel and turned to move, a Japanese soldier came out of a different entrance and shot him in the back. Jackson went down. The Japanese soldier charged with a bayonet and we cut him down. But Jackson was dead. That was the pattern. We'd kill them, they'd kill us. We'd advance 10 yards and lose 3 men doing it. Danny Rizzo got hit that afternoon. We were clearing a pillbox when a Japanese defender rolled a grenade out. Danny saw it, tried to kick it away. It went off before his foot connected. Shrapnel tore through his legs and abdomen. He went down, screaming. We dragged him back to cover. He was bleeding bad, real bad. I tried to apply pressure, but there were too many wounds. His blood was soaking into the black sand, disappearing. Am I going to make it? He asked. Scared. Just a kid from Brooklyn who'd always had a joke. I wanted to lie, wanted to tell him he'd be fine. Corpsman's coming, I said instead. He died before the corpsman got there. Bled out in my arms while I held pressure on wounds I couldn't stop. His last words were in Italian, calling for his mother, 23 years old, Brooklyn Dodgers fan, never going to see Ebbets Field again. That's when I stopped counting, stopped trying to remember names, because if I kept track of everyone we lost, I'd go insane. We were only 2 days in. The battle for Mount Suribachi took 4 days. 4 days of cave by cave, tunnel by tunnel fighting. 4 days of flamethrowers and grenades and close quarters hell. 4 days of watching the mountain eat Marines. We finally took the summit on February 23rd, 4 days after we landed. Some guys from Easy Company raised the flag up there. Small flag first, then a bigger one. The one everyone's going to remember. From down below, we could see it go up, see the stars and stripes against that gray sky. Men cheered, actually cheered. First time I'd heard anything like joy since we landed. It felt like victory for about 5 minutes. Then we remembered we'd only taken the southern tip of the island. The rest of Iwo was still ahead of us, still full of Japanese, still fighting. The worst was yet to come. After Suribachi, we pushed north. That's where the real defenses were. The whole center of the island was a fortress. Every ridge, every ravine, every rocky outcrop was fortified. Pillboxes made of reinforced concrete, 5 feet thick. Artillery bunkers buried so deep our naval guns couldn't touch them. Machine gun positions covering every approach. And the Japanese had changed tactics. No more banzai charges. No more wasteful suicide attacks. They'd learned. Now they just defended. Made us come to them. Made us dig them out of every position. Made us pay in blood for every inch. The fighting became methodical, grinding, horrible in its routine. You'd spot a pillbox, call in artillery or air support, pound it for hours, then send Marines forward to clear it. They'd get hit by machine gun fire from a different position you didn't know existed. More casualties. Pull back. Repeat. Sometimes it would take all day to advance 50 yards. Sarge Hayes got it on the 8th day. We were assaulting a ridge when Japanese artillery opened up. He was directing our squad when a shell landed close. The concussion threw him 10 feet. He didn't get back up. When we reached him, he was still breathing. Barely. His chest was crushed, ribs visible through his uniform. He tried to say something, but only blood came out. He died looking at the sky. Probably didn't even know where he was at the end. Best Marine I ever served with. Father figure to half the company. Dead on a volcanic island 5,000 miles from home. Mike Chen took over as squad leader. Quiet Mike, who'd volunteered to prove his loyalty, now responsible for keeping the rest of us alive. He was good at it, smart, careful. But even careful Marines died on Iwo. The island was 8 square miles of hell, every square foot contested, every position a fortress. The Japanese had spent 8 months turning Iwo into a death trap, and we were walking through it one bloody step at a time. Water was scarce. Food was cold rations. Sleep was impossible. You'd doze for 20 minutes in a foxhole and wake up to mortars falling. The smell of death was everywhere. Bodies we couldn't retrieve, rotting in the sun. The sulfur from the volcanic rock mixing with the stench of decay. We stopped washing, stopped shaving, stopped caring about anything except staying alive one more day. Replacements kept arriving. Fresh-faced Marines from the States shipped in to fill the holes in our ranks. They'd last a day, maybe 2. Then they'd be casualties and new replacements would arrive. A cycle of death. I stopped learning their names, stopped talking to them much. What was the point? They'd be gone soon anyway. That's what Iwo did to you. Turned you cold. Number. You couldn't afford to care because caring meant breaking. The Japanese fought like nothing I'd ever seen. They never surrendered. Never. We'd clear a position and think it was done, but they'd come back through the tunnels at night. Attack from behind. You could never relax, never feel safe. They'd leave booby traps, explosives rigged to bodies, caves that looked empty but weren't. We learned to be paranoid, to trust nothing, to assume everything was trying to kill us, because it was. Flamethrowers became our most valuable weapon. Terrible weapon, but effective. You'd torch a cave entrance, and the Japanese inside would either burn or suffocate. Sometimes they'd come running out on fire, and we'd shoot them. It was horrible, necessary. Horrible. I used a flamethrower once. Only once. Poured fire into a bunker for maybe 15 seconds. Heard screaming. Smelled burning flesh. When I ran out of fuel, I handed it off and walked away. Threw up behind a rock. But I did it. Because that's what we had to do. By the 15th day, we'd lost half our company. Half. Some killed, some wounded and evacuated. Some just gone, missing in the chaos. Mike Chen was still alive. So was Rodriguez, a few others. We'd become a unit of strangers held together by shared trauma. We didn't talk about home anymore, didn't talk about after the war, didn't make plans. We just existed, day to day, hour to hour, trying to survive one more firefight. The island was supposed to be secured in a week. We were on week 3 and still fighting, still bleeding, still dying. And the Japanese never quit, never stopped. Even as we pushed them back, even as their numbers dwindled, they fought. Every single one of them prepared to die. It made me hate them, really hate them. Not the abstract hate of war, but personal burning hatred for making us do this, for forcing us to kill them, for not just surrendering. But they never would. That wasn't who they were. So we killed them, cave by cave, bunker by bunker, position by position, and they killed us right back. I turned 23 on March 3rd, 12 days after we landed. Didn't tell anyone, didn't matter. Just another day of trying not to die on a worthless volcanic rock that was costing us everything. March 9th, 18 days in, that was my worst day. We were assaulting a position called Hill 362A, just a number on a map, another ridge, another collection of fortified caves and bunkers, another piece of hell. Our squad was down to 8 men, 8 out of the original 13 who'd landed on the first day. The rest were dead or wounded badly enough to be evacuated. Mike Chen was still leading us, still keeping his head, still making smart calls. He'd saved my life twice already, once pulling me into cover when I froze up, once spotting a sniper before the sniper spotted me. We'd become brothers in a way that's hard to explain. Not friends, exactly. Something deeper, something forged in fire and blood. You don't just like the men you fight with. You love them in a way that has nothing to do with normal love. They're part of you. Your survival depends on them. Theirs depends on you. The assault started at dawn. Artillery prep first, pounding the ridge for an hour. Then we went in. The Japanese were waiting. They were always waiting. We made it maybe 30 yards before the machine guns opened up. Rodriguez went down immediately, took rounds to the chest and throat. Dead before he hit the ground. Been with us since the first day. Gone in a second. We found cover in a rocky depression. Mike was calling for supporting fire. The rest of us were shooting at muzzle flashes, trying to suppress the Japanese positions. A mortar round landed close. Too close. The blast wave felt like getting hit by a car. My ears went dead, that ringing silence where you can see mouths moving, but hear nothing. When my vision cleared, I saw Mike on the ground. He was still alive, conscious, but the shrapnel had torn through his left side. I could see the damage, ribs exposed, blood everywhere, pieces of him that shouldn't be outside his body. Corpman? I was screaming, but I couldn't hear my own voice. Corpman. I crawled to him, tried to apply pressure, but there were too many wounds. My hands were covered in his blood within seconds. Mike looked at me. His eyes were calm, too calm, like he knew. He tried to say something. I couldn't hear. Leaned in close. Get them, he whispered. Blood on his lips. Get them for me. You're gonna be fine, I said. The lie came automatically. Corpman's coming. He shook his head slightly, knew better. We all knew better by then. Tell my family. He coughed. More blood. Tell them it mattered. It did. It does. Another lie. But what else could I say? That we were dying for 8 square miles of volcanic ash. That thousands of us were being fed into a meat grinder for an island we'd probably never even heard of before this war. Mike Chen died holding my hand. Took maybe 2 minutes. His grip got weaker. His breathing got shallower. And then he was just gone. Eyes still open, staring at nothing. A Japanese-American kid who'd volunteered to prove his loyalty, who'd fought better and braver than anyone I'd ever known. Dead on a Japanese island fighting Japanese soldiers while people back home probably still thought he was the enemy. Something in me broke then. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just broke. I'd seen hundreds of men die, had stopped feeling much about it, had to, or I'd have gone crazy weeks ago. But Mike was different. Mike had kept me alive, had become the closest thing to family I had on this godforsaken rock. And now he was just another body. I sat there for I don't know how long. Could have been seconds, could have been minutes. Just sat there with Mike's blood on my hands, his body next to me while the battle continued around me. Someone was yelling at me, telling me to move, to get back in the fight. I couldn't make myself care anymore. A lance corporal, some kid I didn't know, grabbed me by the shoulder. "Marine, we gotta move." I looked at him, looked at Mike's body, looked at the ridge we were trying to take. "For what?" I heard myself say. "For fucking what? We got orders." "I don't care about orders. He's dead. They're all dead. And for what? This shitty island, this worthless piece of rock?" The lance corporal looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. "We're gonna die here," I said. "Certain. Absolute. All of us. For nothing." He didn't argue. What could he say? We both knew it was true. A sergeant I barely knew came over. Older guy. Had that look veterans get, the one that says he'd seen too much, understood too much. "Take 5, Morrison," he said quietly, not unkindly. "Get yourself together." "I can't do this anymore, Sarge." "Yeah, you can, because there's no other choice." He was right. There wasn't. You couldn't quit, couldn't surrender, couldn't just stop fighting. You could only keep going until you were killed or wounded or the battle ended. So that's what I did. I closed Mike's eyes, took his dog tags, left his body there because we couldn't carry it back, added him to the list of ghosts I'd be carrying for the rest of my life. Then I picked up my rifle and kept fighting. But something had changed. Some part of me that had been holding on, maintaining hope, believing in the mission, that part died with Mike Chen on Hill 362A. What was left was just meat and bone and anger, a machine that killed because that's what machines do. We took the hill that afternoon. Cost us 12 more Marines. We held it for 2 days before moving on to the next objective. Another ridge, another number on a map, another piece of hell. The island was declared secure on March 26th, 35 days after we landed. 35 days of constant fighting. 26,000 American casualties. 7,000 dead. 7,000. Nearly 700,000 Japanese defenders had been on the island. We killed almost all of them. Barely 1,000 surrendered, and most of those were too wounded to keep fighting. We'd won, they told us. Secured the island. The airfields were ours. B-29s could use them as emergency landing fields. We'd saved thousands of American pilots. Maybe we did. Maybe it mattered. But Mike Chen was still dead. Danny Rizzo was still dead. Sarge Hayes was still dead. Tommy Sullivan was still dead. And I was still here, covered in their blood, carrying their ghosts. Victory. That's what they called it. Didn't feel like victory. They shipped us off Iwo on March 27th, put us on transports back to Hawaii, said we'd earned rest, said we were heroes. I spent most of the voyage below deck, staring at bulkheads. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat much, couldn't shake the feeling that I was still there, still on that black sand, still hearing the mortars, still seeing Mike's eyes go empty. The Navy corpsman said it was normal. Combat fatigue, shell shock, whatever they wanted to call it. Said it would pass with rest. 3 weeks later, I'm sitting here in this hospital in California talking to you, and it hasn't passed. Don't think it ever will. The nightmares are constant. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there. Back in that crater watching Tommy Sullivan die. Back on Hill 362A with Mike bleeding out in my arms. Back burning Japanese soldiers alive with a flamethrower. Back stepping over bodies of men whose names I never learned. I wake up swinging sometimes, crying sometimes, screaming sometimes. The nurses have learned to approach carefully. They want me to talk about it. Say it'll help. But how do you explain what it was like? How do you make someone who wasn't there understand what we went through? What we did? What we became? I killed men on Iwo Jima. Lots of them. Shot them, burned them, blew them up. Some were so close I could see their faces. Young faces. Not that different from ours. They were trying to kill me, so I killed them first. That's what war is. But it doesn't make it easier to live with. People back here don't understand. Can't understand. They see the newsreels, the flag raising on Suribachi, the triumphant Marines, the conquered island. They don't see what it cost. Don't see the 7,000 dead Americans. Don't see the psychological wreckage we brought back with us. My mother visited yesterday. First time I'd seen her since before I shipped out. She cried, hugged me, said she was so proud, said I was a hero. I couldn't look at her, couldn't tell her what her hero had done, couldn't explain that the boy she sent off to war died on a beach in February, and what came back was something else, something broken. She asked if I was okay. I lied, said I was fine, just tired, needed rest, more lies. The war teaches you to lie, to the enemy, to your buddies, to your family, to yourself most of all. The other Marines here, the ones who were on Iwo who survived, we don't talk about it much. We'll sit in the day room, smoking cigarettes, and occasionally someone will mention a name, a buddy who didn't make it, and we'll nod, acknowledge the ghost, then move on. What else can we do? Break down crying, scream. We spent 5 weeks learning to bury our feelings just to function. Can't just turn that off now. They're giving me a medal. Purple Heart for the shrapnel wound I got on day 3. Didn't even remember getting hit until I noticed blood on my leg that night. Seemed trivial compared to what happened to others. Compared to what happened to Mike and Danny and Sarge. They died. I got a scratch and a piece of metal to wear on my uniform. Some justice. The war's still going. Japan's still fighting. We're bombing their cities, burning them to ash, preparing for the invasion of the home islands. They're already calling for volunteers, for men who survived Iwo to go back, to do it again. I can't. I know I can't. But I also know I will if they order me to. Because that's what you do. You follow orders. You go where they send you. You kill who they tell you to kill. And you try not to think too hard about why. Iwo Jima was supposed to matter, supposed to save lives. The airfields would support the B-29 bombing campaign, emergency landing fields for damaged bombers. Thousands of airmen would be saved because we took that island. Maybe it's true. Maybe those 7,000 Marines died for something. Maybe Mike Chen's death mattered. Maybe it all mattered. But sitting here, 3 weeks later, still seeing his face when I close my eyes, still hearing Danny's last words, still smelling the sulfur and blood and death, it doesn't feel like it mattered. It feels like we fed a generation into a volcanic meat grinder because some generals decided 8 square miles of ash was strategically important. I'm 22 years old. I've killed more men than I can count. I've watched my friends die in my arms. I've done things that would make my mother weep if she knew. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I survived. I'm mostly intact. I'll probably get discharged eventually, get to go home, try to build some kind of life. But I'll never really leave Iwo Jima. None of us will. That island is part of us now, in our sleep, in our silence, in the way we flinch at loud noises, in the distance we keep from people who weren't there. Mike Chen told me to tell his family it mattered, that his death mattered. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I believe it myself. What I know is that he died scared and in pain, thousands of miles from home, on an island most Americans couldn't find on a map. I know he bled out in volcanic sand while I watched helplessly. I know his last thoughts were of his family, and I know I'd trade places with him if I could, because at least he's done. At least he doesn't have to carry this anymore. The survivors, we're the ones who have to live with it, have to carry the weight of what we saw, what we did, who we lost. They call us the greatest generation, say we're heroes, say we saved the world. Maybe we did. I don't know anymore. All I know is that part of me is still on Iwo Jima, still 19 years old, still watching Tommy Sullivan fall. Still 22. Still feeling Mike's blood on my hands. Still burning men alive and trying not to think about it. Still dying over and over every night in my dreams. They say the battle ended on March 26th. They're wrong. The battle never ends. It just moves inside you, becomes part of you, changes you into something you don't recognize. I survived Iwo Jima. That's what they'll write in the history books. But the Jack Morrison who landed on that beach on February 19th, he died there with the rest of them. What came back is just a ghost learning to fake being alive. We never came home, none of us. We're all still there, still fighting, still dying, always.